I'm not gonna lie, it doesn't always take much for me to become interested in a video game. Sometimes all it takes is a cool art style, soundtrack, or even just sometimes some mysterious screenshots to put a game on my radar. And for Refugium Games' recent release of Greyhill Incident, all it took was a minute and a half long trailer to move me from having no idea what this title was, or even who this developer was, to locking in this survival horror game centered around an alien abduction as a day one purchase for me.
I'm here. You need to wear a tinfoil hat. Your son Henry too. They go into your brains by telepathy.
Lunatics and conspiracy theorists claim to have seen a UFO.
The trailer kinda had it all. A moody atmosphere with thick mist hanging in the air, a setting that looked both remote and haunting, and not at all out of place for an episode of The X-Files or even a game like Alan Wake. A quiet rural town in America taken over by Roswell Greys and flying saucers out of 1950s black and white sci-fi. But even in this short trailer, it was obvious that this was a grittier and potentially grosser interpretation of Little Green Men than something like M. Night Shyamalan's Signs.
Brave bastard. Get your fucking fingers out of my dirty ass!
No, this was the B-movie schlock out of something like Mars Attacks, South Park, or Plan 9 from Outer Space, complete with tinfoil hats, government cover-ups, cattle mutilation, and, well, probing. I could tell right away that this game was a throwback to the time where people were more scared of alien invaders than rising housing costs and global warming. And I'm definitely here for that. I love moody atmospheric games, especially when they take place in settings that seem to mirror the Pacific Northwest. And while I can't claim to have any proof of extraterrestrial life or any first-hand accounts, I always definitely understood where Agent Fox Mulder was coming from back in the X-Files, because I too want to believe. And who knows, with all the recent declassified information coming out of the US government in the last few years, maybe, just maybe, we will find out that we are not alone in this universe in the very near future. And as conspiratorial as it may sound, this game, as well as the recent reunion of Blink-182, could very well be the first steps in a psyop to get us ready for the big reveal. I'm mostly fucking around, but only mostly.
Just like my company's going to be building, this electromagnetic craft that really can do the same thing to time that I've been telling you about. Other civilizations have that too,
But sadly, as much as Greyhill Incident was set to swoop in as one of my new favorite cult releases, some real problems made it so that this game that seemed all but tailor-made towards my tastes just ended up floundering all of its potential. And in some ways, Greyhill Incident is built on such a flawed foundation that it may be one of the worst games that I've ever played, with mechanics and pacing that seem almost focus tested to be, well, anti-fun. And really, it's a damn shame, because there are moments and certain environmental design choices that tease the player with the ghost of what could have been. So, what is Greyhill Incident? In short, this is an indie horror game from Aaron Roller, a newcomer to the industry, and just a handful of supporting artists, and more than just a little help from the Unreal Assets store. We play as an everyman named Ryan, a single father, which is something that the game just will not let you forget.
In addition, you can sleep better at night if you remember that a neighbor is patrolling outside, even if he can't hold on to his wife.
He can watch after you until I come back with your dad.
You can't protect me? My dad says you're a weakling, and you can't protect anybody. He said you couldn't even save your own marriage.
He lives in the titular town of Greyhill with his son Henry and his dog named Max. He is part of the local neighborhood watch, with his particular role seeming to be nothing more than cruising around the town late at night with a baseball bat and walkie-talkie. And through an intro cutscene, we are introduced not only to the setup for this game, but also its tone.
Guys, can you hear me? Someone was in our backyard next to our dog last night. When my husband came out with his gun, the unknown was gone. Since then, our dog has disappeared. I want to file a complaint. I'll call the police in a few minutes.
Amy, as you already know, I don't trust these people. Neither the government nor anyone else, and you shouldn't trust them either.
I've heard some criticism on the writing and voice acting from early reviews for this game, but I have a feeling that this particular style is really going to be a matter of taste. I personally just immediately threw this overly paranoid writing with a penchant for exposition dumping firmly into the intentional camp bin. This is not serious, this is a throwback to disaster piece style storytelling. equal parts killer clowns from outer space, and Trolls 2.
They're eating her! And then they're going to eat me! Oh my god!
But this style isn't going to be for a lot of people. Really, this whole production seems to be going for a so bad it's good kind of vibe. And while there are certainly times where this is the case, this game sometimes steps over that subtle tripwire directly into just bad territory. But through this intro, we are given the particulars. And as a funny little coincidence, this game takes place in 1992, which for some reason has now become something of a theme for this channel recently, with my last essay being on both Rachel Foster and Gone Home, both games that took place in the same time frame. And for some reason, I am now finding myself back in what appears to be the outskirts of the Greenbrier house from the Fulbright Company's classic. If I had to guess why this era seems to be such a hotbed for games that are trying to push themes of isolation and mystery, I think that in choosing this time period, which in most ways resembles our current era, it allows for the setting to feel grounded in a way. But it also allows for the story to get rid of things like cell phones and internet access that has become so ubiquitous in today's era. After all, the events of Gone Home would have gone down quite differently if Katie could have just called her parents at the beginning. But enough of that, and back to the topic of this video. The people of Greyhill have been seeing some sketchy shit for the last few nights, with more than a few neighbors reporting what seems to be evidence of the early stages of an alien invasion. But Greyhill is a town of conspiracy theorists and overly paranoid rednecks who decide that there is just no use in calling the officials, as that would just make matters worse for all of them.
Let me finish. Don't tell the policeman anything. Otherwise, we all end up in the psychiatric ward.
And now Ryan is the lucky bastard on night watch, just as things seem to be ramping up. From the moment that we first take control of Ryan, we are introduced to his son Henry, who is complaining about the TV signal. But we are soon made aware that there might be someone actually inside of the house with us, and so we go to check that out, but then we hear Ryan's dog barking at something in the backyard tool shed. Once we get in there, we see a strange light, and our dog soon runs after it. With Ryan now freaked out, he heads inside to see Henry at the now functioning TV, and already reports of this alien invasion are being discredited as a hoax, with the now verified source of the captured footage that was shown on the TV being nothing more than a weather balloon.
The minority tries to convince other people that the small green aliens are real. The government has checked into this incident and has announced that this UFO, fortunately, is just a weather balloon.
That is not a weather balloon. They're lying. The government is lying and they're trying to hide it from us.
Recognizing this as a cover-up, Ryan decides to fully embrace his role as the neighborhood watch. And after getting some guidance from a Vietnam vet with a drinking problem, he sets off into the night to find and help his neighbors as the small-scale invasion takes place. And these early sections of the game are pretty decent. Walking through farmland and cornfields with flying saucers obscured out in the distance by the crisp marine layer rolling in, and finding evidence of the invaders before they become an actual part of the game. In these early moments, I found myself fully drawn in. And even if the dialogue and the characters are crass and tropey, there is more than a fair bit of charm to the world that is built here in Greyhill. And even with the game being largely the work of one dude, the game always manages to look terrific in these early stretches. But after Ryan is forced to take a detour through a cornfield, we are treated to, in some ways, the beginning of a significant downturn in quality. As you close in on your house, Ryan is forced to watch as Henry is abducted by the aliens. And really, this is probably the last great sequence in the game. The way that the light plays against the environment, and the way that what has only been threatened up until this point is finally just put out into the open, it's a terrific reveal. But in a lot of ways, the sequences up until now have only served as this game's basic intro. And upon getting back to the house and verifying that yes, Henry is gone, and then hearing a siren, Ryan makes his way towards a crashed police cruiser and finds a small service weapon. And from this point onwards, we enter a very different game from what has been shown to us up until this point. After returning to your house, we find that Bob, the neighborhood conspiracy theorist and local abduction expert, has taken up his post on your front porch. You originally meet this character during the intro when you're making your way through the farmland, and you see that this man has used tinfoil in a bunch of ways to shield himself from the aliens. And he's a fun character for the most part, but meeting him here the second time, he sort of just becomes the taskmaster. And so a game that started off as a set-piece driven narrative experience becomes a fetch quest focused survival horror game with some of the jankiest mechanics that I've ever seen. The first problem with this game shows up even in the first mission. Bob tasks Ryan with securing some nails so he can board up the rest of your house. He tells you that he left some over at the Creek family house and that they should still be in the kitchen. But when Bob tells you where the Creek family house is, he says that is the first house on the left, but decidedly points right. This is more of a funny moment than anything, but it does become a really annoying feature of this game. Characters often talk to Ryan as if he already knows his way around the town, and while this does make sense from a narrative standpoint, it often led to me being largely confused for stretches at a time. But even this is compounded when we get to the second problem that haunts this game, and that is when we finally meet an alien. On your way to find Bob's nails, you see an alien slowly making his way up into the same house where you are headed. And while I would say that these aliens being modeled after the iconic Zeta Reticulans that have kind of come to define what most people even think of when they hear the term alien, and while I think most people are going to struggle to find these guys even a little scary, this first reveal is oddly effective. But once you close in on your objective, you soon learn how this game handles its alien encounters. Once an alien has spotted you, it is just going to make a beeline for you. It shuffles along staring at you with its big soulless black eyes, animated very poorly, and you cannot outpace it as Ryan. The alien walks at you much faster than you could walk away as Ryan moves at a frustratingly slow pace. And though Ryan can sprint to break away, this drains a stamina meter in literal seconds and leaves Ryan winded for a decent amount of time. If an alien gets too close for comfort, which you will fully know because an obnoxious musical track bombards the player whenever you have been spotted, you really only have 4 options. Run and attempt to hide, which is easier said than done, as the aliens tend to track you pretty well. But you can sprint around a corner and try to hide in a car or trash can. But realistically, I never found this to be the most effective way of dealing with the aliens, as the game offers no real feedback for when you are effectively hidden, and the hiding spaces completely obscure your vision, so oftentimes you'll have no idea when it's even safe to emerge. Your second option is probably the one that you're going to end up using the most, and it is Ryan's baseball bat. If an alien gets close enough to you, you can crack them right in the noggin. But even this comes with a certain amount of risk considering the comically short range that the bat actually has. Seriously, in a lot of ways, swinging this baseball bat feels more like swinging a fly swatter, making it so that the actual window that you have to hit these guys is extremely small. These aliens need to be right up on you in order for you to hit them. And although it is actually kind of funny when you do hit them with this wet pool noodle, there is just a strange lack of impact that kind of makes it oddly satisfying, at least in a real unintentional comedy kind of way. But really, this just staggers the invader long enough to start a retreat. Hitting an alien 3 times will drop them, but even this just puts them on the ground for only a few seconds. And when coupled with Ryan's movement speed, these knockdowns really only serve to offer the tightest of escape windows. Your third option is to shoot them with the service weapon that you stole. But even this method has its fair share of drawbacks. First, it takes 2 bullets to kill an alien. Shooting them once just wastes ammo. So if you decide to go this route, you will always have to plan on using 2. And while it's effective and there seems to be a fair bit of auto-aim, actually finding bullets in this game is a bit harder than you would expect for this conspiracy theorist haven in rural America. When this game is being particularly generous, you can sometimes find 2 bullets at a time, but considering how they are always just individual rounds, I actually found locating these things in the environment to be incredibly hard. And you can really only interact with them when you are standing right over them. And then the second drawback to this gun is that the shots alert surrounding aliens. So really, this weapon should only be used when you're closing in on an objective and there just happens to be one straggler in your way. And then your fourth option is just die. Well, not really, but when an alien does catch you, you are given a brief opportunity to, and this is how the game tutorializes it, spam R2. At least on the PlayStation controller. This little mini game seems wildly inconsistent as it seems to be based around your stamina more than anything. But with sprinting and even swinging your bat using up the precious resource, there were times where I got captured a few times in a row during a sequence and I was able to mash out each time. But then there were a few missions where I just get grabbed once and be greeted with one of the funnier game over screens that I've ever seen. But if you can successfully fend off an alien, it does give you a small window to run. But if you are dealing with more than one alien, you're kind of fucked, because as soon as you break free from one, you will just be stun locked by the other until you die. But this encounter at the Creek House isn't too bad. You either shoot the alien or you knock it down long enough to grab the nails, and then you just kind of hobble your way back to Bob. But this first mission really sets the tone for this game. Someone will task you with aiding them in some fetch quests, and then you will make your way in some vague direction, hoping that you're making progress at a snail's pace. And when you locate your objective, you will usually have to accomplish whatever is required of you, all while trying your best to evade the aliens. And good luck with that. If there was just one word I could use to describe the alien scripting in this game, it would be inconsistent. But if I were allowed to use 3, they would be busted as fuck. You have no feedback for when they can or cannot see you, and they seem to function off some sort of invisible die roll as to whether or not they're going to go aggro on you once you reach a certain distance away from them. But even when they do start chasing you and it's very hard to get away, there is always sometimes the random chance that they're just gonna stop for no real reason. There is a music cue that lets you know when you've been spotted, but running away until the music stops, that's not an indication either, as I would spot them still following me multiple times after the game made me think that I had got away once the music cue had stopped. Alien placement in environments seems to vary with each death, so even trial and error is not something that you can lean back on, and sometimes aliens will just be waiting behind doors for you. The encounter music often doubles the track, making it hard to know if you've been spotted by 2 of these bastards, or if one just lost you momentarily and is chasing you again, so the music just starts up twice. And then the worst of it all, these motherfuckers can just teleport directly to your location sometimes. Your second goal in Greyhill Incident is to scour a local neighborhood in order to locate 5 rolls of tinfoil. And there seems to be 4 to 5 aliens patrolling the area upon each attempt. 3 of the rolls are in different houses, with the final 2 being on picnic tables in the shared backyard. Where these aliens are going to be in this environment is largely RNG. So you start each attempt by trying to sneak into one of the houses, hoping that one doesn't just randomly spot you, and if it does, you're probably fucked. If you have enough bullets, you can shoot it, but that has its drawbacks and ammo is scarce, so the best course of action is either to run or to hit it with your bat. But in doing so, you have no idea when you're going to come across another alien and alert one of the other 4. But granted you are able to pass these aliens on your way to one of the houses, it actually puts you into a different kind of bind. As on more than one attempt, I had an alien just randomly decide to check the house I was in for some reason, and then you just end up in a claustrophobic nightmare where you are running in circles around furniture long enough to clobber these fools enough times to drop them. And then you frantically approach the tinfoil long enough to pick it up, as picking up things in this game makes you feel like a slasher movie victim trying to start a car. And then you return to bashing the alien again because it was able to get up while you were grabbing the tinfoil, and you just keep bashing it until you get a window to run back out of the house, usually right into another fucking alien. And each roll of tinfoil is like this, a complete shot in the dark of what you are going to encounter, and then there's always just the threat of one of these aliens just teleporting into you and starting the bullshit all over again. And all this haphazard design really highlights what I consider to be the main issue plaguing this game, and that's checkpointing. In this tinfoil mission, you have to get all 5 pieces before the game checkpoints again, and you have to get the 5th one while you're in the clear, so no grabbing it while an alien is chasing you. And in between running around trying to avoid your adversaries, you typically alert another, making your odds of survival infinitely lower. And then there is just the biggest fuck you of this level's design, which is one of the houses. Every time you open the door, there will be an alien immediately behind it. So even if you skulk around in the dark like some kind of pervert long enough to get all 4 pieces, that 5th one has the potential to be run-ending. And I'm not gonna lie, I spent a lot of time in that area, and it almost broke me. Greyhill Incident is not a long game. After beating it, I checked out some other playthroughs of the game online, and it looks like most people are clearing it somewhere between 1 to 3 hours. my run was closer to 3. And while sure, I can admit that this was largely from becoming impatient and just trying to dash through some sections before being completely punished for it, I pretty much found myself in a constant state of frustration with this game. When you play a good survival horror game, the horror comes from the setting, the atmosphere, and the feeling of being exposed. Greyhill is not a good survival horror game. It is a bad one. The aliens are not where the horror comes from in this experience. Neither is the setting. The only scary thing in this game comes from the fear of losing progression. And that is the opposite of fun. I understand that this is not going to be a great comparison, but really, hear me out for a second. I've been chipping away at a game called Hades recently, just doing a run here and there for the last couple of weeks. And that game really put it into perspective of just how frustrating this fear of losing progression is here in Greyhill. In Hades, when you die, it is usually your fault. And although there is that moment of, fuck, when you screw up, you usually were able to learn something about the game for your next run. And then there is the added layer of being able to power up your character between runs, buy new additions to the world, or at least chat it up with a few gods and goddesses. In Hades, death is in some ways rewarded, but at the very least, your time is always respected and you are always ready for your next run after just a few moments of frustration. I know these two games couldn't be any more different in the way that they are structured, but the point remains, this design in Greyhill is what gets people to end playthroughs, and considering that the structure of this game rarely permits fun to begin with, it makes losing progress even worse. I eventually made it past this tinfoil mission, and I would say that this is the worst mission in the entire game, but that structure pretty much remains throughout. Talk to some fool, they give you some vague place to go, and then you slowly make your way over there ducking aliens. You find your shit, you bumble around until you can turn it in, and you just keep your fingers crossed that the next checkpoint isn't going to be too far away. If you've been following my channel, you may know of a project that I have on here called Ranking Every Video Game Ever Made, where I take the games that I've covered in these essays and I rank them between every 5 normal episodes that I do. Right now, the worst game that I've covered on this channel is The Suicide of Rachel Foster, a real contender for the worst game of all time as far as I'm concerned. But before that game won its place on the list, there was another game that held that spot, and it was Five Nights at Freddy's Security Breach. My reasoning for why I disliked that game so much was terrible AI that did whatever the fuck it wanted, terrible save mechanics, a confusing layout for its objectives, and the only horror in the game coming from losing progress. Greyhill couldn't be more similar if it tried. And while I'll wait for the next ranking video to really compare and contrast these two train wrecks, I did not have a good time at all. Some late game objectives went smoother than others, but even then there was always something bumming me out about Greyhill, even when the game was at its best. There are things to like about it, largely in its presentation and tone, but when things are on fire, no amount of cool looking flying saucers, an ending that I'd say came too soon and out of nowhere, but really I just felt relief to be done with the game, or bizarre Christian rock adjacent credit songs can remedy.
Bob? Who are you just talking to?
Greyhill had all the potential in the world, and while I'm not going to say that the game is without any merit, the title simply wasted everything that it had going for it. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you for watching. It's greatly appreciated. And if you liked the video, please consider dropping a like, commenting, or subscribing. Greyhill Incident was kind of a wreck, but the next video that I'm planning on covering for this channel is going to be kind of a bigger one. So please stay tuned, and I'll see you in the next video. And until then, you're all beautiful people, and I hope you have a great day.